So in the way that energy and luck are basically two ways to talk about the same thing, space and time are actually just two words to talk about essentially the same thing. Things moving in relationship to other things. Let's put it all together. Simulation theory, God, Big Bang, how do you start when there could be no beginning, infinity, and all the rest. Well, you start with really sketchy handwriting, and I say, imagine reality looking like this, a Mobius strip. Do you know what a Mobius strip is? Basically, it's just for, let's say just for description purposes. So I'm not saying there's a physical Mobius strip in space somewhere. But for conceptual purposes, imagine that space and time are circular, or just to make it more sciencey, it's something where if you start here and you keep going, you end up in the same place. So I could have drawn a circle, but this looks more like sciencey or science fiction-y. So imagine what happens after the Big Bang. After the Big Bang, all right, so far I've explained time and infinity, and we've explained how there could be a beginning. Because it's illogical that anything has a beginning, because there has to be something before that. But if space and time are in a loop, any kind of a loop, then you don't ever need a beginning, because it can just loop. It just is what it is. It just sits there as a loop and needs no beginning. But you might say to yourself, where did this come from? Well, maybe it came from a higher level simulation. Because if anybody creates a simulated world that thinks it's real, eventually that simulated world will also evolve until it can make its own simulation. So in theory, the simulations go all the way down. Every simulation will make another simulation to infinity. So there shouldn't be one of these. There should be something closer to an infinite amount of them over time. We don't know if that's happened yet. Now, how do you explain the fact that the Big Bang was supposed to create a situation where the gravity, because everything has gravity, would eventually slow the expansion of the universe, and then it would close back in itself and create the Big Bang again? That's what the scientists say. But then when they looked at the actual expansion of the universe, they found out the expansion was increasing instead of decreasing. The gravity was supposed to stop the expansion and then suck it back together over a gazillion years. But it's actually increasing. So what happens if all the matter in the universe continues for trillions of years to expand? All right, think of it in terms of not energy, but in terms of the odds, right? Remember, because energy is really just another way of saying the odds. Wherever there's the most energy, there's the most possibility. So at the moment of the Big Bang, there were no possibilities. As soon as one thing changed, hypothetically, if one thing changed in that solid, nothing moving world, could that one change have made everything unstable and blown up into the entire universe? Now, once the universe is as, let's say, 14 or 15 billion years old, what happens to the odds of anything happening? They start getting really good. So suddenly you went from the singularity where nothing could happen, and the odds of anything happening were basically zero, to something happened. Maybe you could call it God. If one particle changed in the singularity, and that was all it took to blow it up, you would call that a God particle, wouldn't you? Just something that happened that shouldn't have happened, and nobody can explain it. One particle got on a whack, and boom, universe. Now, as soon as the universe is big, you go from no possibility, when it's a singularity, to lots of possibilities. There might be aliens on other planets. We might be inventing fusion. Lots and lots of possibilities. But now let's play it out a few more trillion years. In a few trillion years, will there be more energy in any given part of the universe or less? Well, if everything's flying apart, do you get to the point where everything's cold and dark and dead, and all of the possibilities die again? Because if you do, maybe you don't need to get all the way back to a singularity. Maybe just all the possibilities are exhausted. And when you get back to a situation where all the possibilities are exhausted again, maybe it just starts over. It's always darkest before the dawn. So one model of reality is that there are a whole bunch of looped realities, so there's no beginnings and no ends. Each of these loops is created by a higher level loop, which does imply there's one original species. But I'm not sure it has to, because could it be that the original species is also looped? Could it be that there is nothing to anything except the odds expanding and contracting? Could it be that the heartbeat of reality is nothing but a multi-trillion-year heartbeat in which we start with nothing is possible, it expands to everything is possible, and then, here's the magic part, the moment everything is possible, nothing can happen. Yeah, what'd that do to your brain? The moment everything is equally possible, nothing can happen. And that's the singularity again. So there should be a natural heartbeat to the odds of anything happening, from zero all the way to everything, and then instantly back to zero, and then back to everything. Now, how it gets out of the nothing is possible would have to be God, right? So in this model, God is the odds. God is the possibility that you could go from nothing is possible to everything is possible. So God could be the smallest change in this stable singularity, and it just blew the whole thing up for trillions of years. Now, if you looked at it on the smallest scale, you'd say, if that's all God is, it's like one little God particle, or it's a muon, or some damn thing we haven't discovered yet, and all it did was tweak. It just went from no possibility to boop. It just moved, and the whole thing blew up. If that's what happened, then God would be both the smallest thing in the universe in terms of the smallest initial action, and also the biggest. It would be everything and everywhere all the time, this thing called God, under that model. Now, this allows your traditional God and all its beliefs, because you might be on a loop where your religion is exactly correct for all you know. But other people could be on other loops. So, I believe this answers all of your questions. And let's see if I've lost anything out. It's also the only theory that predicts that the universe will keep expanding. Traditional science has to throw in, correct me if I'm wrong about that, but doesn't traditional science have to throw in dark matter to get the expansion? So basically you have to make believe there's an invisible thing, or else the math doesn't work. Dark energy. Yeah, dark energy, I'm sorry, not dark matter. I've solved the meaning of life. That is correct. And so, would you also like to know what a soul is? Let me tell you. In this model, a soul is what happens if your life has a ripple effect that affects other people. Because any change to anything will change everything forever, or it'll change forever like a ripple through time. Even the smallest changes, we know that. So when people die, they really, the thing you call grief, I like to say, is them incorporating their energy or the information that mattered from their life into the survivors. And they feel that as grief, but basically they're just merging with somebody else's soul, essentially, and taking that forward. So that's one definition of a soul. And the other definition of a soul would be some higher level entity that's managing your avatar. All right. And that is all I have for you today. So All right, I need some feedback. Was this interesting? You don't have to believe it, by the way. I'm not trying to sell you on believing it. So I should get I should get lots of extremes. This is usually the kind of material where people either hate it or love it. Word salad alert. Yeah, that's not a wrong comment. What's funny about all of the criticism today is that it's all on point. I don't know if you've noticed that yet. But like almost every criticism anybody said about what I've said today or who I am or what I'm doing, they're all on point. Like I have a defense for them. Like, well, it's not as bad as you think or whatever. But they're not wrong. Not wrong. Somebody said that this was word salad. And to some extent, language restricts you so much that you really can't get out of the word salad when you're on this topic. So I mean that's actually a completely reasonable criticism. For those of you who like this sort of stuff, you want to look for my book called God's Debris. It's not this exactly, but if this content you found interesting, that's the book that would spin your brain on. All right, and that is all I have for today. Now we'll talk to you on YouTube tomorrow.